Welcome to Jules Math Tools, where math is made easy. In today's session, we will be converting a percentage to a decimal number by first changing it to a mixed fraction. In our first example, we're going to be changing 144% into a decimal number. And for our first step, we're first going to take this percentage and rewrite it as a fraction. And remember that whenever you're changing any percentage into a fraction form, regardless of how large the number may be, it always is rewritten with 100 as its denominator. Now that we've changed our percentage into its fractional form, we're now going to change it into a mixed number. And remember that a mixed number involves a whole number and a fraction. So to change this into a mixed number, we first need to change it into a whole number, and looking at 144 over 100, we know that we have one whole, which is our 100%, plus our 44 100ths. This is what our mixed fraction 1 and 44 hundredths actually means. Now that we have our improper fraction changed into a mixed number, we're now going to change its fractional part, which is 44 tenths, 44 100ths, into a decimal number. And to change this into a decimal number, you can either decide to take two approaches. One, you can decide to reduce the fraction further and then perform your division, or you can perform your division between 44 and 100 without going into reducing your fractions. And if you're one of those persons who is good at reducing fractions, you can feel free to do that. But if you aren't, you can just perform a division on this fraction and still end up with the exact same answer. Now to demonstrate this, I'm going to use both methods. But first, I'm going to use my 100 and divide it into 44. 100 can't go into 44, so that means that we're going to add our 0, because 0 times 100 will be 0, and we're going to bring our 44 down, input our decimal point in both our dividend and quotient, add a 0, and change my 44 into 440. 100 goes into 440 4 times. 4 times 100 is 400. 440 subtracts 400 leaves us with 40. And we're going to add a 0 again, bring down that 0 and change my 40 into 400. And 100 goes into 400 4 times. 4 times 100 is 400. 400 subtract 400 would give us 0. So my fraction 44 100 is now 0.44. And when added to my whole number of 1, this will equal to 1.44. And okay, so remember earlier I also told you that you can also decide to reduce your fraction a little further. I'm going to also perform that step. I'm also going to perform that step because when we reduce our fraction, all we are doing is changing it to one of its equivalent forms. And to reduce my fraction 44 100ths, I can divide my fraction by 4. 44 divided by 4 will leave us with 11. 100 divided by 4 gives us 25. So we now have 11 25th, which is an equivalent form of 44 100ths. And I'm going to be dividing my 25 into my 11. And 25 can't go into 11, so we're going to add in our 0, because 0 times 25 will give us 0. 11 subtract 0 gives us 11. And we're going to add in our decimal point, add our 0, bring down that 0, changing 11 into 110. 25 goes into 110 4 times. 4 times 25 gives us 100. 110 subtracts 100, leaves us with a difference of 10. We're going to add a 0 again, bring that 0 down, change our 10 into 100. 25 goes into 100 4 times. 4 times 25 gives us 100. And 100 subtract 100 gives us the difference of 0. So we can see that whether we decided to divide with 44 100ths, or if we decided to divide with our 11 25th, we still ended up with 0.44. And again, remember that even if you had decided to just use our fraction that we began with, which was 144 100ths, and divided, we would have still went directly straight to this answer. So either approach that you decide to use will still help you end up with the exact same answer. So let's try another example. You can feel free at this point to pause the video, change your fraction 178% into a decimal number, and then when you're ready, unpause the video and feel free to watch as I perform the exact same working. Okay, so we're going to begin again by changing our 178% into a fraction with 100 in its denominator. And again, we're going to change this fraction 178 100 into a mixed number, because 100 can go into 178 ones, and we'll have 78 hundredths remaining over. And now that we've changed this into a mixed number again, and this method that I'm using, where I'm using 1 plus 78 hundredths, if you're familiar to one of my earlier videos, I demonstrated to you how we got this fraction from changing changing improper fractions into mixed numbers and expressing them as this, because this means that our whole number 1 is being added to 78 100ths. Okay, so again, we can either decide to perform our division from here, but this step I'm going to just reduce our fraction first, and then I will go back and perform our division on both of our numbers. So my 78 I can divide by 2, and my 100 I'm also going to divide by 2, which will give me 50, and my 78 will give me 39. So we have 39 50th, and I'm going to now perform my division with 100 dividing into our 78. 100 can't go into 78, so we're going to add a 0. 0 times 100 is 0. 78 subtract 0 gives us 78. Add in our decimal point, add in my 0, change 78 to 780. 100 goes into 787 times. 7 times 100 gives us 700. 780 subtract 700 gives us a difference of 80. We're going to add in a 0 again, bring down that 0, change my 80 into 800. 100 goes into 800 8 times. 8 times 100 gives us 800, and 800 subtracts 800 gives us the difference of 0. So we now have 1 being added to 0.78, and when added together we get 1.78. And again, I'm going to perform the division on my 39. So 50 can't go into 39. We're going to add a 0. 0 times 50 gives us 0. 39 subtract 0 gives us 39. We're going to now add our decimal points. Add my 0. Change 39 into 390. 50 goes into 390. 7 times 50 is 350. 390 subtracts 350 gives us the difference of 40. We're going to add a 0, bring that 0 down, changing 40 to 400, and 50 goes into 400 8 times. 8 times 50 is 400, and 400 subtract 400 gives the difference of 0. So again, we got our 0.78 by performing our division. And so my percentage 178 is 1.78 as a decimal number. Okay, so remember that you can continue practicing this method until you get better at it. But remember that you can change your percentage, especially our larger percentages, into decimal numbers by improper fraction, where you can just perform your division from 178 and divide 100 into that number. Or you can change it into a mixed fraction first and just divide the fractional part of your number to change it into a decimal number. Or even if you're good with reducing and maybe you don't want to divide by the larger number, you can reduce your fraction and then still change it to a decimal number. But whichever method you decide to use will be the correct method as long as your working is done correctly. So this is how to change a percentage into a decimal number. And until next time, this is Jules Math Tools, where math is made easy.